Unknown and mysterious creatures. Shapeshifters, Part 1. I'm your host, J.V. Torres. Throughout most of human history, tales have been told about beings transforming into other things, such as animals and even monsters. Even in today's world, stories fascinate us with the notion of changing from human form into something else. Vampires come to mind of a human-like entity that changes into a bat to escape danger. The motif of the werewolf is essentially a human changing into a terrifying, wolf-like creature at the very exposure to moonlight. The human psyche seems to be hardwired to, at the very least, entertain the notion of transforming into something other than a human body. Children come into contact with the notion of shapeshifting from early on. The story of the Frog Prince dates as far back as the 13th century. It's a very familiar fairy tale of a frog changing into a prince, and eventually found its way into popular children's stories retold over the centuries. In Greek mythology, the all-powerful Zeus was said to have transformed into many creatures, including the cuckoo, a bull, a swan, and even an insect. But one doesn't have to look for such stories in antiquity alone. There are countless modern accounts of strange transformations. Some sound unbelievable, and some are hard to explain. Witches have long been associated with shifting into cats and other animals. Even I, as a child, heard a story about my grandfather and a witch in South Florida. In my culture, it was said that witches could change into owls and fly around at night looking for lost people to inflict fear and spells on them. The story goes that my grandfather had captured an owl believed to be a witch. He doused the bird with lighter fluid and lit it on fire. Those who were there recounted that the witch screamed like a horrified woman. The next morning, one of the town's women mysteriously disappeared and was never heard from again. This story terrified me as a child, and I thought it wasn't real. But then, I had my own encounter with an owl at night in the city. I remember my siblings and I walking one night near our home and seeing an owl flying overhead. It appeared to be heckling us until my brother threatened to launch rocks at the nocturnal raptor. After some long, frightening moments, it suddenly flew off. I can still recall the eerie screeches and sounds the owl made. And I remember my older sister and brother saying it was a witch and that the encounter was a bad omen. Psychotherapist and shamanic healer, Dr. Stephen Farmer, has written extensively about shapeshifting. On his blog site, he discusses many stories about shapeshifters in history with a great emphasis on shamans with this ability. He says, and I quote, "There are many stories of shamans who have mastered this ability to shift their form and consciousness into animal beings because they have not limited their imaginative capacity to the degree that those of us in modern civilization have been conditioned. Indigenous people not only lived in the natural world, but were of it and intimately connected to the earth beings, both physically and spiritually." End quote. But it's one thing to imagine being an animal. It's quite another to physically change into a creature with a completely different and unique set of physiological attributes. Is it possible to change a human being's specific anatomical physicalities into that of a completely different organism, including one of, say, a four-legged physiology. In 1970 Nigeria, a goat was arrested on suspicion of robbery. The story was told that two men were attempting to carjack someone. A group of vigilantes stopped the robbery and a chase ensued. However, witnesses said one of the would-be robbers transformed into a goat using black magic. Ironically, the goat was taken into custody. It's just as mysterious for someone to instantaneously change from one form, one gender, to another person of a different gender and age. One such unsettling account comes from an internet message board where someone recalls an encounter shared with 3 other friends. It's a story that took place around 2002 in Cranbrook, British Columbia. While driving late one night, they said they spotted a small boy standing by the side of the road. The boy was glowing and wearing a hospital gown. He walked onto the street directly in front of the vehicle when something inexplicably happened. The boy had shifted into an old native woman. The woman made it to the other side of the street and collapsed. The 4 friends stopped and asked the woman if she needed help, but the woman said no and insisted they not call the police. Unsure of what to do, the 4 friends drove to a grocery store about a half hour later and called the police. They turned around, and by the time they were back at the spot where the woman had collapsed, the police were already there, and the woman was also still there. Years later, this account continues to haunt the 4 friends, and one of them refuses to discuss the matter anymore. Did they actually see a small boy change into an old native woman? It's a question they wrestle with to this very day. But these stories aren't just told in obscure places by common townfolk. Even global celebrities have stories about shapeshifters. Billy Corgan, frontman of the alternative rock band Smashing Pumpkins, claims to have had an encounter with a shapeshifter, not once, but twice. Corgan made his revelations on the Howard Stern Show, where he gave some disturbing details of having contact with a person that changed into a different person in his presence, seemingly in the nude. Singer Katy Perry, during an interview, appeared to change from human to reptilian, with color change and pupils changing into slits right on camera. When Perry realized her eyes had changed, she quickly moved her face away from the camera. And many other world-famous people have been said to change their eyes to reptilian on camera. Could it be there are humans among us that are actually reptilians disguised as humans? This is a popular conspiracy theory, and if there is anything to it, what does that mean for humanity? Shapeshifters seem to have been a part of cultures throughout human history. It's such a massive topic of discussion. This program plans to revisit it in future episodes. What do you think? Are shapeshifters real? If you have a story you'd like to share, or if you have some suggestions for future episodes, please leave us a comment. Visit our website and also consider becoming a patron. Follow the links in the show notes. Until next time, keep your eyes and ears open for more unknown and mysterious creatures.